Hey, everybody, and welcome to another podcast for the IN8 Summit this year. We are super lucky and I'm going to say privileged to be able to welcome this next person. Dr. Mo is an amazing human being that has officially said yes to come and speak this year in person. So, Dr. Mo, thank you for saying yes to come to the IN8 Summit this year.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm so excited to come across. There have been so many restrictions in the last 2 years. I'm so excited to be able to come back again for another visit to Australia and really dive into the neuroscience of chiropractic with the IN8 Summit.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool. And I know that the good thing is we've actually kept your name off the websites and off the list until now. So we're going to be obviously letting everyone know that as a bit of a surprise, because I know your brain, your knowledge, and what you've done for this profession. But I'm so excited for this year to have you for a good couple of hours speaking this year on the neuroscience, on the I suppose the science of the chiropractic adjustment, the subluxation, all those kind of wonderful fun things. For those that don't know a bit about you, can you maybe give us a little bit of a background about who you are, where you've come from, and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Most people call me Dr. Mo. I'm Dr. Monique Andrews, chiropractor and neuroscientist. I have been teaching and speaking about chiropractic and the mind-body continuum for the last 20 years. Before that, I was a research scientist in the area of psychoneuroimmunology and the neurobiology of reward. So I really sort of blend that Western neuroscience with Eastern philosophies and from a chiropractic lens. My mission really is to deliver the science of chiropractic in a way that is accessible to everybody, because nothing is worse than going to a conference or a seminar and the speaker on the stage is more interested in demonstrating how smart they are. And what you really need are tangible bite-sized pieces to take away that you can use in the office on Monday. And that's what I'm going to deliver at the summit this year.
I love that. And the fact you said your mission is to do that makes me so happy, because you're right. Our confidence as chiropractors comes from multiple different streams. You might be a technique kind of chiro, or you might be a science kind of chiro, or just a full-on philosophically based, fish slapping hippie that gets their confidence from just hugging people. But like the fact that, that level of brain understanding and getting you to really have that confidence to know someone that's got a bigger brain than me has told me the information about chiropractic, and now I can then go and deliver that thing on my people. It's going to be a massive effort for us and a huge, I suppose, benefit for our stage this year. So tell me a bit more about that. Obviously, I know your background. You're a Palmer grad. You kind of graduated back in 2001 in, what do you call it, the Cavalier year? Pretty much like a pretty rock star year.
The Camelot years,
Camelot,
when
sorry.
Guy Reekman was president at the time, and it was when he reopened the campus to people like Reggie Gold had been banned for years, and Arnaud Bernier, Sigafus even, and he basically reopened the campus and said anybody that wants to come and share their message can come. And so it really was very expansive time. I think for chiropractic, things have changed a lot at Palmer College since that time. But I'm really happy, very fortunate, really blessed to have graduated in those years.
And that's a good thing as well, hearing those stories. I mean, a lot of the university students around Australia might be like, oh, I studied at RMIT, or I studied at Macquarie or Murdoch, or, the ACC now. And we kind of we understand some of the universities in America that have had their challenges, but to hear those names like, the Sigafuses and the Brunet, what's his name? Arnaud Bernard. You said his name before. Oh, are you still there?
I'm still here.
All right, good. Like some of those big names, I know he's an absolute wizard with his hands, and there's a lot of work now in France. But I just feel like for us this year to have you to come out there and share your knowledge, which is going to be pretty exciting. So maybe on that, is there any kind of little pearls you can kind of, I suppose, drop in and talk to us about this year that the audience might be excited about hearing from you? That could kind of maybe wet the whistle a little bit.
Yeah. Something that, I'm going to talk about chiropractic and its impact on the brain. Something that I say all the time is when you adjust the spine, you change the brain. And if you change someone's brain, you change their life. And we have so much more science now than we've ever had. There's the real confluence between chiropractic and neuroscience in a way that really informs our purpose moving forward. Something that Reggie used to say is the objective determines the action. Well, if we know that when you adjust the spine, you're actually impacting areas of the brain that really make us uniquely human, then doesn't that make what we do every day so much more purposeful? And so a lot of what I love to talk about is the science that we have today that shows the impact that we are having on human experience, because we don't want to talk about back and neck pain. We want to talk about, this is what, is going to change your life. We want to enhance people's life expression. We want to talk about changing their quality of life. And if you go to work every day, it's not going to take too long to burn out if day after day you're leaning over the table talking about back and neck pain. So my purpose really is to drive that conversation away from that and get deep into the neuroscience of chiropractic from a really pure, principled chiropractic perspective.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. When you say the principle base, we're actually speaking it through that lens of vitalism. And that human to human connection is such an important factor rather than the back pain, neck pain. And let's face it, a lot of clients do come in with neck and back pain, but if we can then kind of almost show them the other side of what's possible. And you think you said before about adjustments make people more human, that kind of, we're actually on this planet to be humans and to be. So,
and to have a human experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. And tell me about that. I've seen some of the things that you've done with your retreats that you run in Costa Rica as well. That's for chiros and chiro students. And I've seen you're obviously big into adaptation levels. And can you maybe elaborate a bit more on that and how adaptation and what parts of the brain are working when we do increase one's adaptation levels?
Yeah, well, I think, we talk a lot about adaptation, adaptability in chiropractic. One of the things that a lot of chiropractors use, and it's been in conventional science for 20 years, right, is HRV. It's a widely accepted objective measure of overall health and adaptability. And I think that again, going back to that idea of moving our message away from being back and neck pain, acknowledging it, right? Probably 80 to 90% of visits to chiropractors are for back and neck pain, but really, what are we doing? We're enhancing people's ability to adapt and change to an ever evolving environment. And for me, that's one of the most important things that we do, like something like cultivating resilience, right? What is resilience? Resilience is your ability to prepare for, recover from, and adapt to stressful environments. And really, doesn't everybody want that? And I think the more that we shift the conversation in chiropractic towards those things that are actually doing, that we can objectively measure, things like adaptability, the sooner we're going to be able to get that bigger piece of market share in chiropractic. Because let's face it, we've been hovering at 10% really for a long, long time. And, we could belabor why that is. And I think instead, let's focus on what's possible.
Yeah, I think you imagine if we had, even if we got to 12% or 14% or maybe 17%, we would need way more colleges, way more students, way more chiropractors. And we're all bickering over enough clients. But imagine if literally the world knew what we have to offer. It would be just a game changer for our communities. So on that, when we do deliver an adjustment, can you maybe help us elaborate about one adjustment? What is it actually doing for the neurology of the body?
Yeah, so, there are a whole different series of different studies now, certainly studies that come out of New Zealand, but Japan, other areas that look at different elements of function of the brain. So we can look at electrophysiology using EEG. We can look at how chiropractic impacts metabolic utilization and function in the brain through PET scans, fMRI telling us now about how we have different areas of the brain are functionally connected. And some of the really interesting work of late, and probably really important, looks at the pain processing networks in the brain, because there are people in our profession that actually think that the impact of the chiropractic adjustment is only happening locally, like at the level of the musculoskeletal spinal segment. And they say, well, the impact of the chiropractic adjustment only reduces pain because it changes the inflammatory immunohistochemistry at the level of the spine. Well, that really, it doesn't even scratch the surface of the impact we're having on the central nervous system. And so there are many studies today, EEG, PET scans, fMRI, even genetic studies that are done in animals that show that when you adjust the spine, you're actually influencing the brain. And specifically, you're doing it in areas that are responsible for things like compassion, for consciousness, and for our ability to connect with one another. Humans have a larger prefrontal cortex than any other species, and an extremely evolved and myelinated vagus nerve system. You know, something that I'm extremely passionate about is the chiropractor's ability to impact the vagus nerve and how that changes our entire expression. And in fact, it is our route to impacting the immune system.
Wow. All right. The funny thing is now, we as chiros have known the value of the adjustment for quite some time, purely by just the more people we touch and adjust, the better results are there. But we probably can't explain the underlying science behind it. But now the world of science, and even like I've got clients that are coming now saying, oh, have you heard of that thing called the vagus thing? I've got some vagus thing. And it's like, great. All right, let's kind of discuss that a bit more. But I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'm like, shit, vagus nerve. I remember that was somewhere in the cranial. Yeah, I know all about the vagus stuff. So that's kind of your passion. Can you maybe just elaborate a bit more about the vagus nerve?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'll probably talk about this when I come for the summit as well. You know, what's really big right now in the medical community is this term dysautonomia, right? And as chiropractors, we know we impact the autonomic nervous system. And conventional medicine, get this, right? They're starting to look at the biomechanics of the occipital cervical spine, and they're starting to point to the spine and the neurology of the spine as a source of dysautonomia. Now, that term gets thrown around a lot. People are probably familiar with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. And there are medical doctors now that actually are treating dysautonomia and things like POTS by impacting the spine. Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of pisses me off. Like that's our business, right?
Yeah,
and they're not using adjustments and they're not calling it subluxation, but what they're doing is actually doing injection therapies, right? Or surgery. Yeah. So here's where the vagus comes in. Your vagus nerve literally sits just anterior to the transverse process of atlas. It's sitting right there in the cervical spine. And in fact, if you look at the accessibility of the vagus, the area of your body where the vagus nerve is most accessible is right here. There's something called the auricular branch of the vagus nerve, and even the cervical branches here that make the vagus nerve accessible to us. As a chiropractor, if we're adjusting the upper cervical spine, we don't have the science yet. The coolest thing, because the branches of the vagus nerve that are actually most accessible transcutaneously, and by that I mean through the skin, they are literally in and around the ear, and that's called the auricular branch of the vagus nerve, and the cervical branch that comes down around the cervical spine right here. So it's very easy to stimulate the vagus nerve in this area. And again, as I said, you know, while we don't yet have the chiropractic causative randomized control studies showing that, vagus nerve stimulation has been happening in conventional medicine and science for 20 years. And this is a widely accepted area that you're able to easily access and stimulate the vagus nerve. Now, what happens when you stimulate the vagus? Let me give you a little background on the vagus nerve to start, right? It's easier to tell you what the vagus doesn't innervate than to tell you what it does. And the vagus goes all the way from your neck and down everywhere to, but excluding the distal third of your colon. Basically, every cell, organ, and tissue in your thorax and abdomen is innervated by the vagus nerve. And one of the most important connections of the vagus is between the brain and the gut-associated lymphoid tissue in your gut. This is the gut-brain connection. Yeah, and literally, the vagus nerve connects your brain to the gut. And in doing so, is part of this really important inflammatory pathway. And in fact, there are many studies, again, randomized controlled studies in conventional medicine that show that when you stimulate the vagus, you actually create an anti-inflammatory response.
Wow.
I think this is truly the path that we're impacting on as a chiropractor. This is how we are most closely impacting the immune system, is through the vagus nerve.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about from that, I mean, I know there's been a bit of a surge now for a lot of studies to kind of after the COVID chaos, and everyone's saying, you know, some parts of the world you can't mention chiropractic in the immune system, and as you said, we haven't got the studies yet, but we all know clinically, we all know from a case study point of view, everyone comes in saying, Sam, but like my adjustments, I mean, after my adjustments, I'm feeling healthier, feeling as if I haven't been sick for 2 or 3 months now, and so it just sounds like as if we're kind of, at least we're opening the eyelids into what's possible for us in the future to mention, because, you know, people like yourself that have got that scientific background and the neuroscience understand what the hell the adjustment does. It's funny when you said before, we've all heard of POTS, and I was like, yeah, I've definitely heard of POTS. And then you kind of gave us some acronyms, and it was so not the thing that I thought you were going to say. So,
right? Because people have been talking about POTS as that sort of neurodegenerative disease, right? Where the uncinate start to fuse together.
yeah,
But
exactly.
now, because dysautonomia has become this big thing, right? POTS is this postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, where people, when they stand up from lying down to standing, their heart rate becomes elevated. Now, why is that? Well, one of the definitive links that I can see is through the vagus nerve, and the vagus has a direct innervation to the heart. When we look at something like sympathetic and parasympathetics, they're supposed to be tonically active. What we're actually measuring with something with HRVs, really the predominance of the vagus. And so in the summit, I'm going to break down some really cool new research looking at the vagus nerve and dysautonomia. Like something that's come up recently is this SADS. Are they talking about that over there? The sudden adult death syndrome, which is really it's really sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, but they're calling it SADS, like SIDS, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I haven't heard of that, right? It
yeah.
hasn't got linked yet for us right now in Australia, but I've definitely seen, I've got countless people that can tell me, football trainers and football players and all these kind of professionals are all having this situation. No one's talking about it, but us as chiros that look at health through a different lens are definitely going, come on. So I didn't know there was actually an acronym for it, but yes, there's definitely, it would be nice to have some more information about that. So yeah, look, I just love your passion, and I just know how big your brain is and what you're going to bring for the stage this year. So as I would kind of say, as some of the pearls that you've already dropped for us right now have been in the world of the neuroscience, but I've also loved the fact that you really do have that, I suppose, that layman's way of being able to communicate the chiropractic message and to give us chiropractors a lot of confidence. And I know you spoke last year at the IN8 Summit, and we had it like in the virtual event, but is there anything else you can kind of say from a subluxation point of view? We know now the adjustment can affect a number of different ways, but from a subluxation point of view, and I suppose to be able to communicate a bit about that, and from a neuroscience point of view with confidence, what a subluxation actually is from a neuroscience world.
Yeah, I like to keep it simple. And, for example, I love the Australian Spinal Research Foundation definition of subluxation with those 4 key areas. For me, I like to reference it in terms of when I think back on all of the different possible definitions, what do they have in common? And the principal definitions certainly have in common that there is involvement in the vertebral segments. So, the idea of the juxtaposition, I've always found that to be a bit of a mouthful. I love the idea that, well, I don't love the idea. I like the concept that subluxation creates a disturbance, a distortion in the system through the nervous system that alters the innate intelligence ability to actually impact the body, right? Like, what is the function of innate intelligence? Innate intelligence in her infinite wisdom is to allow for the fullest expression of self. The subluxation creates a distortion through the nervous system that disrupts innate intelligence ability to do its job.
Wow. Yeah, what a simple way to kind of understand that. Yeah, and well, look, I've must admit, a bit glassy-eyed with some of your comments so far, but I'm just so excited about the fact that usually I've already, in a simple podcast, I've written half a page of notes so far, or a page of notes so far, just on some of those points you've already raised. And the big one here was you mentioned before about how the adjustment itself, and through, I suppose, certain neurological pathways, it can help a human being have more compassion. And then that brain-body connection, brain-gut connection that you said before, I'm not sure about you, but I'm having a huge amounts of clients come in and say to me things. I've actually one in the last 3 months said to me, hey, do you know much about this bone called the atlas? And I've never had a patient ever say that to me before. And I was like, yeah, I kind of know where the atlas is, hopefully. And he's like, yeah, I've heard that my atlas is blocked, and I need to go. It's not allowing me to be the best. This lady was in her 70s, actually. I was so impressed. But I are starting to get a few more clients that aren't just back pain, neck pain, but they've done some podcasts and some blogs. And now in the world of how easy accessible some of the information is out there, a lot of chiros are talking about the vagus nerve and are talking about the atlas and brain-body connection and the brain-gut connection. So I'm actually really excited about having some more information for me as a chiropractor, but also for our audience. So on that, can you maybe just elaborate a bit more about, I suppose, the community, that human element of how the science of the adjustment actually can help someone be
Yeah,
more human or more compassionate.
100%. You know, I talk a lot about chiropractic through a polyvagal lens. And Stephen Porges is really, he's the creator of polyvagal theory. And he's really created a lexicon, I think, that's invaluable to us as chiropractors, because through the anatomy and the physiology of the vagus, we can see how the mind and body is truly connected, and how through working through the body as a chiropractor, we're actually impacting neurological processes that are responsible for human connection. Look, there are three basic human needs. Safety, this is more of a brainstem issue. Satisfaction and reward, which is really limbic system. And then the last one is connection. That happens mostly in the prefrontal cortex. And through the polyvagal studies, through this work through Porges and other people looking at embodied neuroscience, and this is really something that's become my passion, because I really do believe as chiropractors, we are practicing embodied neuroscience. Obviously, it's chiropractic, but from a contextual experience, from a contextual contemporary science understanding, this is embodied neuroscience. When you can impact somebody through the body to create changes in the brain from a bottom-up perspective that we can't do top-down. So many people now stressed out in the last 2+ years with everything that's been happening. A lot of increase in, PTSD and trauma, more and more people going to therapy. And guess what? Top-down therapy, that cognitive-based therapy, is just not working. When you can work through the body with something like chiropractic, you actually create changes in those same brain areas that we have seen chiropractic impacts, like the prefrontal cortex. And this is where they believe consciousness resides, in something like compassion. So you want to talk about connecting to other human beings, right? We've all seen it. We adjust somebody and they get up and they just feel better. They can't even put words. They have a big sigh. There's like a nervous system letdown when the nervous system has become regulated again. It's so beautiful. And what this embodied neuroscience approach can do is just gives us a languaging with our patients. You said it yourself, right? More and more people are coming in with words like talking about their atlas in relationship to non-pain things like dysautonomia. We are at the forefront, but the only way we can do that is if we're armed with the information. So more and more chiropractors need to study and learn about this. That's why I'm so excited to come over there and spend a couple hours with you all and really break this down into bite-sized nuggets so that everybody can walk, away and go into the office on Monday and be able to say, wow, this is what happens when I'm adjusting your spine. We're impacting your brain, and these are the areas, and this is why. And you're going to have an expansive understanding, and the vast richness of life that you experience will be elevated because of chiropractic.
Yeah, I love that. Can you just I've got some points here. Can you just help me clarify? You said that with the adjustment, most human needs is safety, connection, and the middle one was what? Sorry?
A satisfaction. It's more of a limbic emotional response. Like, are you satisfied with life, right? Where do you find reward? It's more about the emotional impact.
And so the satisfaction one was in the limbic system, and then the safety was more in the hindbrain.
Safety is brainstem.
Brainstem.
Satisfaction is limbic system. Yep. And connection is prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, I just love that. Even that kind of, I know that us chiros can probably compartmentalize the brain down to certain areas, but I'm guilty of this. I've been out for 15 years or so now, and I remember neuroscience. When I get a textbook, I can hear the information, but for me to be able to go into my clients and say, hey, this part of the brain here is called your prefrontal cortex, and that there, we as human beings, we have the largest prefrontal cortex. But the good thing is that allows you to connect, and like even to use that as table talk. It's going to be absolutely brilliant for me and my conference as a chiropractor, but also for other people. And then you have the big kind of lawyer or the engineer or the scientist come in, and you can drop in some of those pearls to kind of say, look, man, I know my shit. So I think you're right. Our confidence definitely does come, and us chiros, we need to be better. Like, I think that we can almost rest on the fact that we've got good hands and we can adjust someone. But I mean, it's our duty to be better communicators and actually have more science to be able to show our people that, hey man, like, yeah, I know what I'm doing.
I think a lot of chiropractors think the art of what we do is only the adjustment, but I think the art is the communication. The art is our ability to assess and see what's happening. To the communication is so central. You're like, you could be the best adjuster in the world, but if you're a crappy communicator,
Yeah.
you're going to have a hard time getting people in your office, right?
Yeah, that's such an important point. And I think that
Yeah.
art, I mean, there's an art behind your hands, but there's also, as you said, the communication doesn't just come with your words, but also, you know, the way that you engage in the room, and to be able to have that confidence to kind of say, look, man, lie on the table and let me adjust you. And I just know you're going to be a better version of yourself. So I love
Yeah.
that you said before about, you know, that chiropractic is an embodied neuroscience. I think that's brilliant, especially in that world of, you know, the psychologists, and now every man, woman, and child has got a psychologist, a psychotherapist, has got their trainer,
Yep.
has got their personal coach, their business coach, which is all fantastic stuff. But sometimes it's kind of cool to know that as a chiropractor, we can be helping someone from that, like you said, not top down, but more so like mid body up is
Yeah,
brilliant.
it's really a bottom up approach. When we talk about embodied neuroscience, we're talking about impacting human expression through the body, because we know talk therapy, like it's good, right? It works a little bit or sometimes not at all. And so we know that we can be in the science has now caught up with the idea that we can be incredibly impactful without words through how we adjust the body, through how we can regulate the nervous system bottom up, not top down.
And that I think is so good, because also on that, it's like sometimes, you know what I'm saying, when you kind of go into the room and people say, I've done all these therapies and yada, 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 and you think, just for crying out loud, get an adjustment. Like, let me just adjust you and stay adjusted for a bit longer and have a number of adjustments to allow your system to do its thing, rather than trying to left brain your way out of the problem. So yeah, I love that. Chiropractic is the, you know, in neuroscience embodiment. Look, we could talk all day about this stuff, and I'd love hearing your values, your mission statements to kind of educate more chiropractors, and also just your love for what this thing is called chiropractic and innate intelligence. So before we wrap up, I know you've got to kind of I suppose get excited about being here, not give away too much of your content, but for those people that are coming this year, that word connection and the value of connection with that prefrontal cortex. Tell me more about that, and what the value of us chiropractors, what the value is for chiropractors to come to events like this, to kind of get that reconnection, to kind of, I suppose, be exposed to, you know, like-minded humans.
Yeah. And I think, maybe like even now more than ever, like everybody's been sitting doing this, talking through screens for 2 years now. And we have any opportunity we have to actually be in physical community with one another, I think can radically elevate our experience, not just because of the great, cool things that we're all going to share, but because literally Stephen Porges, who's the creator of polyvagal theory, he says that connection is a biological imperative, that it's actually required to survive. And, I can't imagine why anybody would want to sit home and stare at their computer for another minute when they could come down and join us all at the IN8 Summit. I mean, I cannot wait. I am going to bring so much cool science to explain and give people a new languaging that we've been saying for years, right? And here's the problem. Like, it's great to be passionate, but like we've got to we now have the science that we can pack a much more powerful punch behind that. And that's what I think why us coming together is so critical at this time now more than ever, because you're going to get filled up with community with your chiropractic brothers and sisters, and we're going to fill your brains chock-a-block with the most recent science and communication talking points.
Yeah, I love that. And so, just for all of you attendees out there that are coming, or if you're thinking about coming, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. I never tell anyone about the program, and I get bombarded with emails. Hey, Sam, why don't you tell me that? I want to try and just pick and choose who I want to listen to. And we don't tell anyone know who is speaking at what times and on what days. So therefore, we just know it's going to be jam-packed. I am going to give you all a little sneak peek that Dr. Mo is going to be giving a longer lecture than normal hours. So we're going to give her a good 2 hours of content time, which is pretty exciting. And I might even tell you when it's going to be. Lozzie's sitting here and she kind of gave me the eye, say, don't do that. But I might let you know that it is going to be a important thing for you to do, is have a very nice big lunch, because after lunch, there might be some pretty exciting information hitting your way. That's pretty much all I'm going to give you. But Dr. Mo is going to be rocking our world. And for a lot of us, probably the chiros that are going to be exposed to her is going to be pretty exciting. And some of the CAs will get the information drip fed through them through the chiropractor. That's all I'm going to say on that. But it's going to be a pretty amazing event, and I can't wait to have you here. You're going to be in person, live, hugs and kisses and all that kind of fun stuff. And the Australian audience are very good at, being around the bar and also hugging and making sure we kind of stay nice and connected. So Dr. Mo, thank you so much for saying yes to being on this podcast, but also for saying yes to being at the IN8 Summit Live this year, October the 1st and the 2nd. Any finishing words?
Yeah, no, I just want to again say thank you. And if you're anywhere near Sydney, Australia, or a plane, get there. It's going to be an epic weekend. I can't wait to really drop some of the most important science in chiropractic today. And, I heard you mention a bar and maybe some dinner afterwards. Saturday night's going to be a blast.
It certainly is. We've got not only a dinner, we've got a full-on party that night, baby. It's going to be a bit of fun. So, all right. Once again, thank you, Dr. Mo, and we will see you in a few months now, which is pretty exciting. And thanks for your wonderful pearls of wisdom. Everybody, get online. We've got plenty of tickets available still, and the Hilton's going to be pretty exciting. So stay tuned for some exciting things coming your way on our Facebook page and also through email. But I'm going to be honest and say all the time, if you haven't got your tickets or you're thinking about coming or whatever it might be, I'm just going to say get there. It's going to be an absolutely gold star event. I've said it quite a few times. It's going to be the biggest event of this decade. I honestly believe that. We're desperately keen for connection, but also our lineup is incredible. Now we just dropped the name of Dr. Mo, so it's just getting stronger, richer, and thicker, and we just can't wait to have you all there. So gold class event for a gold class profession, and you all deserve to be there, so let's make it happen. Love you to bits, Dr. Mo. I'll see you in a few months.
Thanks. See you October 1st and 2nd, everybody.
Champion. All right. Bye for now.